You're listening to the ESP, the European Skeptics Podcast, an independent weekly show set up to bring you news, interesting topics, and interviews with people mostly from Europe, building bridges and breaking down language barriers to show the world how active and awesome the skeptical movement is in the region. This is episode 546. I'm your host, András, and joining me for the show is my co-host, Pontus Böckman. See ya!
Hejsan! It's good to be joined with someone.
Yeah, sorry about that. I think that was so far the worst in terms of timing, right? The worst pull-out.
It was a bit difficult, but
I really appreciate the way you pulled it off, and you managed to come out with a pretty good episode. It was so great to hear Randy again.
It was interesting to hear Randy again, and I think especially it was very nostalgic for me to listen to us. This was episode 16, believe it or not.
God.
Were, I'm not saying we're very professional now, but we were just getting started, and we were.
And you can hear that.
Yeah, we were also very much starstruck about having James Randi on the show. And he was a great sport, interesting to hear him talk. The parts that I found most interesting to listen to were the parts when we talked about American politics, actually. Because we drifted into that and he talked about Obama, he talked about Trump. This was months before Trump won the first election. So we were there, oh my God, can you believe it? How bad it will be if he gets to be president. And it was interesting. And good to hear Yelena's voice, of course, as well.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, a lot of very nice memories came back. So it was really great to hear it, because then I think it was 2 years after that interview that we actually met him in person in Prague.
I think it was the next year. 2017, right?
Oh, 2017. Oh, this interview was 2016. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it was just 1 year later we met him.
Oh, yeah.
That was great. And unfortunately, of course, now he's not with us anymore. But it's good to have this document that we created together. Yeah,
and whatever we said on the interview about his influence, about his impact, that is still lasting. So it's still valid.
He had a great influence on the SGU. I know that, the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, and they're still going very strong and just been touring the world, being in Australia and New Zealand, and they're very, very active. And he encouraged them a lot when they started up and when they got to know him first.
Yeah. And what really makes his approach and his kind of attitude very important, I think, is that he never slipped into that doom kind of mentality that we're all doomed, we're all fucked, and there's nothing to do here. He was always ready to do something, and this is why we all keep doing this, because even though we can occasionally slip into that mentality, I do occasionally do that. Fuck everything. I don't want to do something that it's completely useless because we're all screwed. But it doesn't do anything, really. This is why I really want to talk about something. It's an article. Obviously, on The Conversation. I love The Conversation. We follow their articles very, very closely. It's a really good source of information. So this is about climate doom, which is something that it's easy to see how climate recording can slip into that kind of communication pattern. And this climate doom, the concept itself that is used by researchers, is the idea that everything is getting worse, catastrophe is inevitable, and there is essentially nothing left to do. And according to a recent article in The Conversation, that kind of messaging may be actively counterproductive. Well, that's not very surprising, but it's good to know from a scientific point of view. And the authors of the article are PhD candidate Rachel O'Boyle and Professor of Social Psychology Sander van der Linden, whom we interviewed back in episode 180.
Yeah.
And the core problem is not that the underlying facts are false. Heat waves, fires, climate risks, these are very real. The problem is the framing itself. If people are pushed towards hopelessness rather than urgency, they are more likely to disengage than to act. In other words, if you tell people we are doomed, they may quite rationally decide that there is no point in trying. And the article highlights another issue too, that doom-like language can feel emotionally manipulative. And once people feel they are being manipulated, they trust the message less, and they also become less willing to take practical climate steps themselves. This is according to the author's study that was published in PNAS's Psychological and Cognitive Sciences with the title Psychological Inoculation Against Climate Doom. And interestingly, the proposed solution is not to downplay climate change, but to communicate it better. The researchers found that people can be, quote-unquote, pre-bunked. That is something we've talked about a lot on this podcast, chiefly in the interview with Sander van der Linden. Yes. In this case, it means that consumers of information can be prepared in advance to recognize the emotionally loaded doom framing. That seems to help them separate legitimate climate reporting from manipulative rhetoric, without making them more dismissive of climate science overall, and as a result, their actions might be more based on scientifically sound claims. So that's a very important thing to bear in mind. Exaggeration and apocalyptic messaging are not automatically persuasive just because the problem is serious. If the aim is public action, then fear without agency may be worse than useless. And I have to admit that I'm guilty of that kind of messaging myself. Even here on this podcast, on occasion, I have expressed myself in that way. And
but we do it tongue-in-cheek mostly, don't we?
Yes, we do. But still, this should not really be done lest we manage to derail someone's climate actions or any kind of action that is science-based. So seeing that science can lead us in the right direction, even in our communication styles, is very reassuring. So thank you very much, Sander and Rachel, for that article. Yeah, so I think that's a quite good read. So obviously it will be on the show notes.
Yeah, right. And they are doing a great job, of course. Do you know who else is doing a great job? Except us, of course.
Well, a lot of people like the Good Thinking Society. I don't know.
Yes, and The Skeptic UK, the magazine, the online magazine in the UK, called The Skeptic. András, do you think that the skeptic movement should recognize the best in skepticism and the worst in pseudoscience?
Definitely.
Yes, that's what they think as well. So that's why they have the Ockhams Awards. And all of this is to tell the audience here that they have now opened the nominations for the Ockhams Awards. And the Ockhams Awards come in two flavors. One that you want to get and one that you want to avoid, I guess. That it's a good prize and a bad prize. The positive Ockhams Award recognize the effort and time that has gone into the community's favorite campaigns, activism, blogs, podcasts, and outstanding contributions to the skeptical cause. If you do all of that, or some of that, you are eligible to get the Ockhams Award for that year. And I can read on the webpage that among the people who have gotten that award are such luminaries as Dr. Flint Dibble, the Knowledge Fight podcast, BBC's Disinformation Unit, Dr. Elizabeth Bick, Dr. Natalia Pasternak, Professor Edzard Ernst, the European Skeptics podcast, have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Brit Hermes, and more. So it's very humbling to see your own creation among those fantastic names. But I mean, don't vote for us. That's not what I'm trying to say here. But if you know something, somebody, some organization or person that has done some outstanding work within skeptic activism, you can nominate them on the webpage, and we have the link in the show notes. You can also, if you find somebody who has done something really bad or is doing something really bad, you can nominate them for the Rusty Razor Award. And who do we have there? We have, last year went to Reform UK, which we also have given a really wrong award to more than once.
I was going to say that if you don't necessarily have any good ideas, just browse through our recent episodes for Really Wrong, and you might find someone that is worthy of nomination.
Why not? I mean, we have Asim Malhotra for scaremongering about the dangers of COVID-19 vaccine. Got that one year. and the Global Warming Policy Foundation for their promotion of climate change denialism, Mike Jeden for his anti-vaccination scaremongering, Didier Raoult for his promotion of hydroxychloroquine as a treatment for COVID, and more, of course. So, the point of the thing is, go to that website, nominate people, and then on the 17th of October in Liverpool, if you're at the European Skeptics Congress, you will hear the announcement of the winners, and you can all cheer and boo as they are announced. And, you boo at the Rusty Racer, of course.
Yeah. Don't boo at someone who gets the Ockhams Award.
No.
Yeah. I don't know if you've noticed, but our own Ockhams Award is right behind me.
Yes. This is not a video podcast.
It's not a video podcast, unfortunately.
But I can see it.
You can see it. Yeah. Nice. Okay.
We only missed the Rusty Racer. We're still looking for a Rusty Racer award one day. Hopefully not.
Yeah, hopefully never get that. No. All right. But we do intend to keep producing this show. Obviously, if you are a regular follower of our content, please share it with others. Please let everyone know around you about this if you feel like this is a good source. If you feel like this could be a better source of information, please help us figure out how to do that. If you know about something that we missed, please let us know. We're happy to report on events, on people's activities, everything that might be relevant to skeptics or someone interested in skepticism of what's going on in Europe. And there are other ways to support us, like you can like us on all kinds of platforms where the podcast is available, on Acast, on Apple Podcasts, on YouTube, on Spotify, everywhere. And you can become a patron as well, if you feel like it.
Right, yes. So if you want to do that, you go to patreon.com/TheESP, and you will find all the different levels there where you want. It doesn't have to be a lot of money, but you can also contact us that way. The fastest way to contact us, I think, is to send an email to info@theesp.eu.
That's correct.
Yeah,
but correct.
We look everywhere for comments, of course.
Blue Sky, Patreon, everywhere. Facebook, Instagram, wherever. And we always love comments, we always love feedback, and we always love 5-star reviews. So you can do that. If you don't want to support us with some money, you can do that by just spending a couple of minutes with writing a review.
And tell your Uncle Frank to listen to the show. I'm sure he would appreciate it.
Okay, but what is it that we are actually providing you with? And that is the content. And the first part of the show, I mean, it's always the introductory part, but the first regular segment we have is what's called TWISH, or This Week in Skeptical History. This week, we are commemorating an event in ancient history that features all kinds of exciting stuff: a massive battle, a dramatic celestial event, a frightened commander, a fatal delay of attack, and a military disaster that followed. Wow. Yeah, all that in a couple of minutes. And it's a perfect example of how ignorance can have devastating consequences. And the event that I am referring to is the lunar eclipse of the 28th of August, 413 BC, during the Sicilian expedition of Athens. So it's almost 2,500 years ago that it happened, but we know for a fact that it did. Yeah, celestial events can be traced back. So when we match them with historical accounts, that's how historical chronology is basically worked out. And it's really exciting. But it's not about that. It's about what happened starting in 415 BC, when Athens launched one of the largest military operations of the Peloponnesian War. And that was one of the major conflicts in the ancient history, by the way, the Peloponnesian War of the Mediterranean, that was about who has full control over the Greek world. And the Greek civilization stretched far beyond current-day Greece and the Aegean Sea region. It included something that was called Magna Graecia as well, the parts of southern Italy colonized by Greeks in the more than 300-year period prior to this conflict. So the two sides in the war were the Delian League, led by Athens, and the Peloponnesian League, headed by Sparta. Now, the Delian League launched something that was called the Sicilian expedition in 415 BC. The goal of the expedition, well, it's called an expedition, but it was basically a large military operation, a special military operation of the kind.
I was going to say.
Of the time. But it wasn't, they didn't want to refrain from calling it a war afterwards. So even Thucydides, the key source of these events, called it a war, the Peloponnesian War. So the goal was to defeat Syracusa, which was sitting in the middle of the Mediterranean on the island of Sicily. It still does. And
they haven't moved it, no.
It's a gorgeous place. So if you have the chance to visit, then go. Syracusa had real military might and a remarkably successful trade network as well. Well, sitting in the middle of the Mediterranean, that's not surprising. And they were allied with Sparta. So Athens wanted to defeat them to extend their power in Sicily and strengthen Athens against Sparta. But instead, the whole military operation, the whole expedition, became one of the greatest catastrophes in classical Greek history. Oops. By 413 BC, it had already been going on for more than a year. But as a result of a couple of strategic fiascos, a very strong Syracusan resistance, and Spartan intervention, the Athenians were in deep trouble. Their position outside Syracusa had become impossible to defend, and one of their commanders, Demosthenes, urged immediate withdrawal. But unfortunately, he was not the supreme commander of the fleet. His advice was actually, militarily speaking, quite sound. Get out while escape by sea was still possible.
Run away!
Yeah, that would have been...
Sometimes it's a good strategy, yes.
It's a good strategy if you want to survive. Because, spoiler alert, he didn't. And then came the eclipse. It was just a normal lunar eclipse. And our key contemporary source here is Thucydides, an Athenian historian and military general himself, who was the single most important ancient historian for the Peloponnesian War. First of all, he was not reporting 200 years after the fact, but from right at the same time. He was also famous for being impartial and attempting full objectivity in his reports, and which was very rare. And he writes that just as the Athenians were preparing to sail away, there was a lunar eclipse, the army was badly shaken by it, and Nicias, the senior commander, is described by Thucydides as excessively devoted to divination and similar superstitious practices. And rather than reconsidering the retreat on practical grounds and executing it, Nicias refused even to discuss departure until the army had waited what is called thrice 9 days, which is basically 3 times 9 days, prescribed by the wise men that he consulted. 27 days of delay in retreat. This was not a pause of a few hours while people calmed down after the eclipse. It was a delay of almost a month at the worst possible moment when they were being defeated anyway. So, obviously, the enemy, the Syracusans, they used this. So secondary accounts, based on Thucydides' reports, described how the Syracusans took advantage of the delay to press their attacks and tighten the trap. The Athenian fleet was attacked again and again, their room to maneuver was reduced almost to nothing, and the exit to the harbour was completely blocked by the time they wanted to escape through it. What had been a dangerous withdrawal from the start just became nearly impossible. When the Athenians finally tried to escape, they were defeated at sea, then forced into a desperate overland retreat. And obviously the army broke apart, thousands were killed or captured, and Nicias himself, and poor Demosthenes, who advised against staying, were executed. Thucydides later called the whole outcome the greatest disaster suffered by any Greek force in that war, and in his judgment, one of the most calamitous in Greek history. And that might be an exaggeration, but it doesn't really matter, because it was devastating.
It was bad.
Yeah, and the stories from the following years in Syracusa, we tell them to people because a lot of slaves were coming from the Athenian fleet. We're talking about thousands of people going into slavery in Syracusa, in the army that was defeated. Now, we have to be a little bit careful here because the eclipse obviously did not single-handedly destroy the Athenian expedition, right? Athens had already made serious mistakes long before that night. Overreaching ambitions, divided leadership, the loss of Alcibiades, a legendary military general, over political disputes with his Athenian politicians. There was a failure to strike decisively and underestimation of both Syracuse and Sparta in terms of their military capabilities. By the time the moon darkened, the campaign was already in crisis. But the episode stands out because it shows how irrational belief can turn a bad situation into a catastrophic one. The eclipse was a natural event. And even in the ancient Greek world, eclipses were not beyond rational inquiry. Thinkers had already sought natural explanations for celestial phenomena, like a lunar or even a solar eclipse. So it was not necessarily something that people had to fear. But Nicias did not treat the eclipse as an astronomical event. He treated it as a supernatural warning, and he let ritual authority completely overrule military urgency.
Don't do that.
Yeah, no, especially, and there are examples of recent events as well that should use this as a warning sign. Like, yeah, it wasn't lack of courage; it was surrendering judgment to superstition. And I think what makes this such a strong skeptical history topic is how you don't have to have total ignorance of a certain topic for it to be catastrophic. Sometimes it is the refusal to act on available reality because fear, tradition, or just bad methods of thinking feel more compelling. Nicias had evidence in front of him, a trapped army, a deteriorating position, and one of his subordinates urging immediate retreat. What he followed instead was some kind of shady logic based on superstition. And that kind of omen-based thinking has a terrible habit. It feels prudent right up until the moment it becomes completely disastrous, right? So when leaders mistake coincidence for causation and symbolism for evidence and put practical and critical judgment aside to make room for superstition, the cost can be enormous. And in the event of the 28th of August, 1413 BC, an eclipse did not doom the Athenians. Their response to it did. And that is precisely why we are commemorating this moment in history on This Week in Skeptical History. Okay, but that leaves us with nothing else but to move on to the news.
Well, we all know how elections bring out the worst in everyone when it comes to disinformation.
Oh, yes.
The Swedish elections are coming up now on the 13th of September, so very close, and it's almost hard to find anything else than election-related news in our local newspapers and news outlets here in Sweden at the moment. And it's a little bit more complex situation in Sweden than we have in, for example, the US, where you only have two parties to choose from. There are currently 8 parties in the parliament called Riksdagen, and they compete for 349 seats. You know, András, by the way, it used to be 350, but then there was the disaster in the 70s where each bloc or alliance got 175 votes each, and they had to draw lots about who was going to form the government. They did that.
Oh, no.
They drew papers out of a hat in the parliament because nobody had thought about that possible. So they decided later that we reduce it with 1 seat so that will never happen again.
Yeah. So it's an odd number, and then
349 is an odd number.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, that's not the point. And I'll come back to the parliament and what happens there. But if you think 8 parties are not too hard to keep track of, let me tell you that if you count all the local elections, there are many more parties around. In addition to the national election for parliament, there are 2 local layers. There's the 21 regions and the 290 communes. So each voter has to put 3 votes, 1 for the commune, 1 for the region, and 1 for parliament. But if you count all the local parties running this year, there are 421 parties in the race in Sweden. That's a new record for Sweden. I think It's pretty impressive. But some of these are very...
the number of inhabitants in the country is like 11 million or something like that?
A little less, I think. 10 to 11 million.
Well, that's quite a great number of parties. Wow.
Yeah, it is, yeah. Always like a good party. No, that's not the same kind of party. Okay.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure that the reason why there are so many is because after a while, disagreements can happen all over the place, right? But then it comes a moment when disagreements are so great and so impossible to manage that they decide that, we can just form a new party. And a good party. Everyone thinks that the party that they used to be in is not good enough. So they have to form a new one.
I'm sure that's quite a lot of. And there's also one of on the local level. There are quite a few parties that only focus on one special thing. Don't build that bridge party, or we want better bins at the city square, or something like that. I don't know.
Do you have something like that, Count Binface in UK?
No, we don't have that blatant mockery of the thing. I think the Swedish parties, they take themselves very seriously. Although Donald Duck always get a few votes, but it's not actually a party, and those votes are thrown away. But some people think that's fun to just vote for Donald Duck. Anyway, back to the 8 main parties. They are divided into 2 coalitions, the left and the right, obviously. The right has been in power for the last 4 years, and the right is actually a minority government because they are backed by the Sweden Democrats, which is Sweden's most populistic party, and that actually grew out of a neo-Nazi party in the 1990s. And because of their troubled path, the Sweden Democrats have not been allowed to get any ministerial posts yet. But the right-wing coalition has said that if they win this year, the Sweden Democrats will get 1 or 2 ministerial posts. So that's something to look out for. However, at the moment, that doesn't seem very likely because the right is falling behind in the polls. The left coalition has around 52-53% in the polls at the moment. And also, that includes the fact that one of the right-wing parties is so small that they will probably fall out of the parliament. So there will only be 7. I can't promise, of course, but I will be very surprised if they stay. So there will probably only be 7 parties left in the parliament, which gives the left an even better percentage. Now,
what percentage do you have to reach? Is it 5?
4% to get a seat in the parliament. If you have below that, then you do not count.
Yeah, for us it's 5. Yeah. So with the coalitions, so they don't run as a coalition. It's an informal thing for the moment.
Yes, it's informal.
It's a kind of alliance, but they still run all by themselves.
Yes. So they are running by themselves, but they have declared that if we win, but it's complicated because the real left party, the most left party, which used to be called the Communists a long time ago, they have never been allowed a ministerial post either, but they have supported the Social Democrats and a few other parties. This is, of course, now debated. Should the left, if they win, should the left get it? It's politics. What kind of? It's a lot about haggling and trying to get your position, and so a lot about that. Okay, so that's the background. Now we know the background, and I would say that this year, it's the most intense and populistic election cycle that I can remember. All the parties, left, right, center, populist, whatever they call themselves, are making one populistic promise after another. Everybody's trying to outdo the other by promising lower taxes, higher pensions, free kindergarten, improved social security, big subsidies on public transportation, things. It just goes on and on. I think there's 40 or 50 different of these kinds of promises now, and they're coming from the right as well. Even if the right, the conservative policies used to be much more, conservative and don't give too much subsidies to people, don't increase the social... But they are scared now because they are about to lose the election. So now they are last minute panicking and throwing promises. So that's one part of this election that is unique, I would say. And I would be very happy to have half the price on local transportation, but that's not maybe something that I should
Yeah, but we have to stay realistic.
Yeah, and I won't base my very important vote on such simple things, I would say. And it looks like people are ignoring it to some extent, because there was another or a couple of polls about how people felt about the economic situation. And most people, or a majority, said that they are actually having a better economic situation at the moment than they had just a few years ago. So I don't know if promising higher child support or so, I don't think that will make it. This is, we'll see. That's beside the point. Let's stay to the skepticism. How about actual disinformation? So one thing is that has happened is that Swedish celebrities are being exploited in political AI propaganda videos like never before. Most blatant example is happening on TikTok. Big surprise. A lot of well-known people like pop artists, actors, even the king himself have appeared in AI-generated videos. At least 70 Swedish celebrities appear in these AI-generated videos, many of them making what used to be the OK sign with their hand, which of course now has been appropriated by white supremacists. So now it suddenly means something. You have to be very careful. You can't use that sign anymore. But they are doing that in these AI videos, and they are wearing shirts that says Alternativ för Sverige. Can you possibly guess what that means?
Alternative for Sweden.
Exactly. So it's that is not one of the 8 parties. That's a very, very fringe party, of course, based on the same ideas that AfD is in Germany.
In Germany,
Alternative für Deutschland. Very far right-wing populist national conservative party. And Alternativ för Sverige, they claim, of course, that they have nothing to do with these videos. There's some, it's an anonymous people who are posting these on TikTok. Who knows? It could also be that they are right, that they are not behind this, and this is foreign disinformation. Several national government agencies have warned that, for instance, Russian campaigns are on the rise. And we see that in all elections, in Europe at least nowadays, and of course in the US as well. So back to TikTok. What do they say about this? On 14th of August, they released their plan to combat disinformation ahead of the Swedish election. So very timely. They promised to suspend, quote, accounts that attempt to mislead users by posing as political or a news outlet, end quote. And the plan places a special focus on AI-manipulated videos. Quote, all realistic AI-generated content on TikTok must be labeled, end quote. This is what TikTok writes. But that's not working. Apparently, these videos are very common, and even after people have reported them, they often stay up for days before they are taken down. But still, I have to wonder. Very few people, I believe, really think that the Swedish king is actively supporting an ultranationalistic political party like Alternativ för Sverige. For one thing, his position is largely ceremonial, and he's not allowed to take a political position. And people are very aware of this. He's not even allowed to vote because he is a figurehead and has to be very neutral. But I'm thinking also that these videos are the most obvious misinformation. How about the less outrageous one? The ones that are not so easy to spot? I think there is a risk here that these obviously fake videos are there as a distraction. So we point to that and we get outraged about this, and then we don't look for the more subtle things, the ones that are really manipulative and credible, but still wrong. So I will, of course, continue to follow this election. It'll be interesting to see what happens. It looks like it's going to get ugly. Well, we'll see what happens.
Do you have organizations that have the resources to dig deeper inside and go behind the scenes to find out who's financing, for example, these content providers? Because it looks like the dismantling of Orbán's regime was due to a large part those investigations that were published and that were made known by everyone, it was obvious after a while that it was public money that went into the financing of the spreaders of misinformation.
There are several government agencies that part of their responsibility is to do that kind of thing.
Investigate.
Whether they can do it or not, I mean, if they have enough resources or technology or whatever they need to do this, I don't know. It doesn't seem to be working that well. We're looking at the TikTok things happening. I don't know. I think there's a lot of organizations, also independent organizations, that are trying to do this, but how successful they are is hard to say.
Okay. Well, but there are all kinds of misinformation, and it's not always TikTok, Instagram, and the like. Sometimes it's YouTube. And healthcare informations are, well, basically a flower bed of all kinds of different disinformation, because we are interested in that. So the Spanish fact-checking outlet Maldita.es has recently published an investigation that they did, and it uncovered what looks like a massive AI-powered health disinformation network on YouTube. The researchers identified more than 1,000 channels posing as medical authorities or sources of medical information, even though the supposed doctors are not real people at all, but AI-generated avatars. According to the investigation, these channels have published close to 100,000 videos in 33 languages, reached audiences in at least 54 countries, and accumulated almost 1.84 billion views.
Wow.
And this is not some old forgotten corner of the internet. Maldita reports that 77% of these channels were created in 2025 and 2026. So this appears to be a rapidly growing and very current phenomenon. And the format is very familiar. A person in a white coat, obviously, speaking calmly and confidently, offering health advice, miracle foods, supplements, dramatic cures, etc., etc. The difference is that now the trusted-looking expert may be entirely synthetic. No real investment had to be made in order to create them. The article highlights examples such as bogus promises that cancer can disappear within 24 hours, for example.
Wow.
Claims that are not merely exaggerated, but flatly incompatible with medical evidence in general. For a European skeptical audience, the key point is scale and portability. Health misinformation no longer needs a local crank with a webcam. It can now be mass-produced, translated into dozens of languages immediately, and distributed across borders with almost no friction. That means the same false claim can be repackaged for Spain, Germany, Hungary, or anywhere else, while still wearing the face of an apparently credible doctor. And you can see that with legitimate products as well. I don't know how much you've seen recently of advertisements on TV, for example. I've seen a couple. And it's unbelievable how widespread it has become to use AI-generated people for legitimate products as well. But if you think about the production costs of using AI instead of using a filming crew to do something like a 5-minute video, not even 5 minutes, 20 seconds video, it costs a lot. But if you do it with AI, you can tell it what you want, and then you have it. It will look a little bit weird, especially when the translations are made, and the dubbing is weird a little bit, so the mouth doesn't move along with the speech. But still, it's a very cheap way of doing it. But when it comes to this, these YouTube channels have a financial gain as well. Maldita says these channels can generate revenue through paid content, donations, and product sales, including supplements, and some redirect viewers to other social media platforms. So this is not just misinformation for its own sake. It appears to be part of an attention and monetization pipeline. Because on YouTube, even after clicks, you can generate revenue. Methodologically, the team says it compiled 33 language-specific datasets and merged them into a single database. It also stresses that this sample probably does not capture the full scale of the phenomenon. In other words, the confirmed number is already worrying, and the real number may be much higher than that. And we have to bear in mind that AI has not invented health quackery, but it may have made it cheaper, faster, and much harder to spot. So be careful, everyone, and keep fighting this with all we have, because it's going to make our lives much worse.
Yeah. I think we need some good news.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm all for it.
Yeah, so we have many times expressed our support for assisted dying on this show. And of course, provided, of course, that it's clearly regulated and monitored and focused on ending unnecessary pain and suffering. That is what we want to achieve.
Yeah.
But therefore, I am happy to see that an end-of-life law has been, after many years of legal debate and shenanigans and stuff, it has been approved by the highest constitutional authority in France. So France now has a legal way of handling this. The law, known as a law on end of life, quote unquote, or aid in dying rather than assisted dying or euthanasia, means that France now has joined a small group of countries in the EU, including Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, and Spain, which all have legalized assisted dying in some form. In addition, we have Austria, Germany, and Italy, which have decriminalized or permitted certain forms of assisted dying. It is legal in Switzerland as well, famously. But Switzerland, of course, is not part of the EU.
It has been for a long time, yeah.
It has been, yeah. The new law in France establishes a right to assisted dying for patients of legal age who are French nationals or long-term residents and are suffering from conditions that are judged as incurable and are causing unbearable pain. That's the language they are using. A doctor must verify the patient's eligibility, and then a panel assesses whether the criteria has been met. And when approval has been granted, patients must wait 2 days before the procedure can take place, and then they have to confirm their decision on the day as well. So taking precautions that it's not done hastily, or you have a little chance there to reconsider your position. And also the patient can, of course, withdraw consent at any time, and he or she has to administer the lethal substance themselves, unless they are physically unable to do so, in which case a healthcare worker can help. This is a big win for President Emmanuel Macron, because he promised a right to die law in his 2022 re-election campaign, and he's been working for this for a long time. It's been hard to get through. And not everyone is happy, of course. Just to illustrate where the resistance comes from. Spoiler, it's religious.
Oh, I wouldn't have thought.
Mainly what we have is the Jérôme Lejeune Foundation. It's a foundation that provides lifetime care to people with genetic intellectual disabilities, such as Down syndrome. They expressed outrage about this. Other campaigners said that the law posed an absolute danger to the most vulnerable, and I don't see that. But what they are really thinking about is Catholic values, I think. Because if God says you should suffer, you cannot cheat. You have to feel all the pain so that you don't forget how much he loves you.
Yeah.
But anyway, good for France. Way to go. Now we can see if other countries will follow. I know there are many countries in the EU where the debate is going on. We had I've talked about a Swedish activist, and there are organizations trying to lobby for this, but it's hard.
Yeah, it is. All right, speaking of lobbies, homeopathy does have a pretty big lobby activity in places like Germany. And I think we mentioned the Bavarian homeopathy study on the show previously.
We did, yes.
Yeah. So this is more of a follow-up on that study. According to a recent report in the Humanistischer Pressedienst, I tried my best. The study has now been definitively concluded, and without answering the question it was supposed to investigate. The project had been launched with strong political backing in Bavaria and had been linked, at least rhetorically, to the idea that homeopathy might help reduce antibiotic use in uncomplicated urinary tract infections and thereby somehow contribute to tackling antibiotic resistance, which would be nice. We have to make that clear. It would be great to find something like that. But homeopathy, really? In the end, though, the study failed to deliver usable results. So we're not only talking about the results being negative. The main reason for that is very simple. The recruitment process completely collapsed. The study had planned to enroll around 220 to 240 women with uncomplicated urinary tract infections. Instead, only 40 participants were recruited and just 22 remained through to the end of the trial. Recruitment had reportedly already been stopped by the end of 2024, so they basically gave up, meaning the project was effectively over well before the final report quietly appeared in the European Trial Register, which is, they waited long enough for the registration of the trial as well. So the article says the study received 800,000 euros in public funding. And this is the bad part, with around 700,000 euros reportedly allocated to the Technical University of Munich. The article's author, Udo András, argues that this outcome should not be spun as a scientific opening for homeopathy. A failed study does not reset the wider evidence base, so the broader research literature still does not provide reliable evidence that homeopathic remedies have effects beyond placebo. So the solution is not to restart this or rethink this study and start over. It's that just let it go.
Stop wasting
money. Because it doesn't make any sense. And stop wasting public funding. It doesn't make sense.
No.
So this was a heavily promoted and publicly funded project that ended quietly, recruited far too few participants, and produced no answer to the question it was meant to settle, whether it can be used for, among others, tackling antibiotic resistance. No. And it's still homeopathy, so just drop it.
One thing they did manage to do, I guess, is to dilute 800,000 euros into nothingness.
Yes, they did. They did indeed.
Vanished.
Yeah. All right, so well done. Yeah. But they're not the only ones who have been really wrong lately. So let's find out who has.
Okay, so this week is a little bit weird because it's about something that I have only second-hand information about. So I should be a little careful, but I think I'm on solid ground here. There is a documentary on Channel 4 in the UK called, quote, The Great ADHD Myth, question mark, end quote. And unfortunately, I can't see it. You can only see it within the UK unless you use some kind of fancy VPN, and I haven't tried that. But according to an article in The Guardian that I find very credible, the documentary, and I mean, you can just tell from the title, can't you? But the documentary seems to be full of unscientific methods and focus very much on conspiracy theories. The basic findings are that they try to establish whether ADHD is a, quote, genuine neurodevelopmental disorder or a social construct. And guess where they end up?
And this is done in a documentary, so it's not a scientific paper, it's a documentary.
Yeah, right. Okay. And also the usage of the word disorder here is very problematic to begin with.
Yeah.
But they conclude that since there is no single brain scan that conclusively prove that someone has ADHD, then ADHD could not be a brain-based disorder. Again, their word. So, therefore, it has to be a quote-unquote social construct, and therefore, again, it is not a genuine condition or thing.
You know what it reminds me of? Creationists demanding one single proof of evolution. It's like, no, it's not how it works. It's an oversimplification of the whole issue.
Not how science works, not how medicine works either. Yeah, so this is obviously stupid and harmful. Not all conditions show up on a brain scan just like that. That should be obvious. And there are a lot of misconceptions and amateur opinions about ADHD in general, not just in this documentary. It's the idea that it's an epidemic that is ongoing, but that doesn't consider that we have broadened the diagnosis quite a lot, and also we are testing for it in quite a different way than you did decades ago. People who have gone undiagnosed for a long time may express great relief from being diagnosed and being taken seriously. That doesn't necessarily mean that suddenly everybody wants to be diagnosed in a problematic way. It's not a movement of people who wants to have a diagnosis just because it feels good. you could actually feel good because you've had a problem for a long while and somebody explains to you what your problem is, and then you can take measures, you can understand what's going on. And that is good. Doesn't make it a quote-unquote social construct. And the stigma of being neurodivergent isn't helped by people, like in this documentary, questioning that you have a condition that needs support. So what they are doing, in fact, when they are presenting things the way they are presenting them, is telling people with ADHD that there's nothing wrong with you. You've just imagined that you have a problem. And that is very harmful, of course. And other people tend to have misconceptions about ADHD as well, not just in this documentary. I saw a debate article recently here in Sweden that more than hinted that ADHD is just a money grab. It's something that Big Pharma has invented to sell more pills to people. So, the public needs good, clear, and scientifically accurate information about ADHD. And this is not it. So, for clearly spreading misinformation, the documentary, quote, The Great ADHD Myth, end quote, on Channel 4, gets today's award for being really wrong.
And it is well deserved. Well, you usually don't hand out these awards lightheartedly, so it's...
I don't know if people think I've made a terrible mistake, not just today, but any time in the past, let me know, and I will see if I need to re-evaluate what I have done, because it's mostly me doing the really wrong segment.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much for that, Pontus. And that brings us to the last part of the episode, when we come up with a quote. And this week's quote comes from Marcus de Sautoy. I hope I pronounce his name properly. He's a British mathematician and Shimoni Professor for the Public Understanding of Science at the University of Oxford. He's the second one holding that position after Richard Dawkins. Yeah. So, as a mathematician in one of the BBC programs that was called The Code, he talks about mathematics and the underlying numerical patterns of the world. So, he refers to it as the code. And the quote is, 500 years ago, when faced with an eclipse, many of us would have believed it was the work of an angry god. But as we've unearthed the language of the code, we've discovered that the apparent mysteries of our world can be understood without invoking the supernatural. And this, for me, is what's so remarkable. That despite the incredible complexity of the world we live in, it can all ultimately be explained by numbers. Just like the orbit of the planets, life too follows a pattern, and it can all be reduced to cause and effect. In the end, even the flip of a coin is determined by how fast it's spinning and how long it takes to hit the ground. The ultimate symbol of chance isn't random at all. It only appears that way. When we don't understand the code, the only way we can make sense of our world is to make up stories. But the truth is far more extraordinary. Everything has mathematics at its heart. When everything is stripped away, all that remains is the code.
All right, that was quite a mouthful. I don't think I can memorize this by heart. It's it's like half the episode of this program that he sent, but it was part of. But yes, I agree to an extent. Of course, he seems a little biased towards maths. There are other things in the world as well. But
it comes with the trade. Yeah.
But I guess the Athenians earlier on in the episode, they could have used, if they had better knowledge about what happens when there's a lunar eclipse.
Well, some of them did. They just weren't listened to.
yeah, right. Exactly. So, education, that's what we need. Scientific education, so that people are not taken aback by natural phenomena.
Yeah. That are usually beautiful, gorgeous phenomena anyway, not to be feared. Okay, but that brings us to the end of this week's episode. So thank you very much for your continued efforts, Pontus.
Thanks a lot.
And your hard work. Many, many thanks to our listeners as well for tuning in. Please keep doing so. And until next week, goodbye.
Hej då!
Vi slatt. This has been your ESP experience. The show is produced and recorded by TheESP.eu. Join us again next time, but until then, please send your feedback and comments to info@theesp.eu. We would also love to hear your ideas and suggestions regarding topics, and if you have any skeptical news from any European country, we're always eager to hear about them. If you have an upcoming local event or an organization to promote, please don't hesitate to let us know, as we are more than happy to help. All music in the program was written and performed by Keisha J. Gray and George Robb and is used with their permission. Please check out our webpage for show notes and archive material at theesp.eu. Follow us on Blue Sky at theesp.bsky.social, like us on Facebook or support our work on patreon.com/theesp. And don't forget to spread the word by sharing our content with others.
I don't know how you can believe.
I can tell you, sometimes I have to re-record when I edit because I say the wrong words. And one specific thing that has been a plight of mine for always is I say 20 when I want to say 70. It's just the brain fart. So 2 weeks ago, there was something I was going to say a percentage, and I said 25% or something, and it should be 75%. And of course, you couldn't react to that because you didn't know. You didn't know what was the right number. Exactly. So for fuck's sake.
So are you actually consistent in using the two interchangeably?
Yeah, that is a sort of a brain damage that I have, specifically 20 and 75. It could go the other way around, 75, 25. I read it, I look at it. It's a big handicap for a finance guy, you know?
Yeah, I would say so.
I see the right number, I count with the right number, I draw the right conclusions, but what comes out of my mouth is a totally different number sometimes. And for people I talk to, that can be very confusing.
Is it raining or someone's running on the stairs?
No, I think there were some people outside. I don't think it made it to the mansion.
Okay. All right. Who has?
Okay, good.